I want to signpost you guys to this interview I've just watched on Seconds Out. It was an interview with James Ali Bashir, who I imagine most of you probably do know. In case you don't, James Ali Bashir is probably one of the most experienced top level trainers who's active today. He was an assistant trainer to the late, great Emmanuel Stewart for decades, I imagine. And he's also a trainer in his own right. He's been part of the Lennox Lewis camp. He was a part of the Vladimir Klitschko camp. And he was actually a former trainer of Alexander Usyk. And he has been employed by Daniel Dubois ahead of Dubois' fight with Usyk this Saturday. And I just find this to be interesting. It's another kind of development in the lead up to this fight that I want to say has divided opinions. I, of course, did my pre-fight video for this fight yesterday, and I made it clear that I'm picking Alexander Usyk, but I see this as being potentially quite a rough fight for him. And I think this shows that Team Dubois really are leaving no stone unturned. Because, as I say, Bashir, in his own right, is an immensely experienced trainer, particularly with heavyweights. But he's got a direct connection to Usyk because I believe that they were in partnership working together for about 3 years. I remember their relationship, their fighter trainer relationship came to a bit of an abrupt end. I think it was around 2017, just before Usyk went into the World Boxing Super Series. I'm going off of memory here, but I vaguely remember it being around that kind of time. So shortly after Alexander Usyk had won the WBO title in 2016. And yeah, they very abruptly parted ways. It was never really made clear. And I think Bashir actually reiterates in this interview that he doesn't really know the answer or the reason why. He just got an email one day and said that his services will no longer be required, and he moved on, and so did Alexander Usyk. But that being said, James Ali Bashir is still very complimentary of Alexander Usyk. He speaks very highly of him and actually says that he believes Alexander Usyk beats Tyson Fury, and basically calls out Tyson Fury's duck, saying that it's clear Tyson Fury doesn't really want any part of Alexander Usyk. And on top of that, I've actually spoken to James Ali Bashir a few times over the years because he used to be part of Hatman's boxing group on Facebook. So this was, 7 years ago, something like that, 6, 7 years ago. And it wasn't often, but every now and then James Ali Bashir would pop up and we'd ask him questions. And I remember around the time that he'd actually split from Usyk, this was shortly afterwards, he was still very complimentary of Usyk then, because I asked him personally, what do you think Usyk's chances are at heavyweight? And he said he's going to clean out. So far, Alexander Usyk's campaign at heavyweight, he's heading towards that. So I think it just goes to show, yeah, James Ali Bashir, you could say that he has a bit of a bias. But when I asked him that question, he had already parted ways with Alexander Usyk, and he was still saying this guy's the real deal and he's going to go up to heavyweight and be a problem. But anyway, that's just a bit of trivia there. There are some important dynamics at play here, and as I say, it shows that Daniel Dubois and his team are taking this very seriously, and they're trying to just get every advantage they can get and really put themselves in the best position to win this fight. Because with Bashir in the camp, they can get direct intel about Alexander Usyk, what strengths in particular, what weaknesses in particular. Because of course you can look at the tape, and I'm sure they've done that, but why not consult someone who's worked with Usyk and who knows him very well? 3 years of partnership there. And one thing that came into my head is Alexander Usyk is, I don't want to say reaching the end of his career, but he's at an advanced age now at 36. And I'm wondering if James Ali Bashir has been quizzed by Team Dubois about any particular injuries that Alexander Usyk has. Because surely in 3 years, you get flare-ups, you get small niggles, overuse injuries, stuff like that, maybe even chronic injuries. And don't underestimate how that stuff can play into a fight, because boxing is a full contact sport, and there's a lot of impact, there's a lot of collision, and if you're cognizant of a particular weak body part that your opponent has, you can exploit that. You know, if imagine if your opponent has a history of eye injuries, you know, the left eye, the right eye, which one are you going to aim for? Imagine if they have a bad shoulder, a bad elbow, and you can just aim some of your offense there to get that arm out of action. So I'm not saying that Alexander Usyk does have injuries like that, but I'm just saying if they've taken on James Ali Bashir, they might be able to find out if Usyk does, and maybe just put a little bit of emphasis somewhere. So from the perspective of Team Dubois, I think they've, you know, pulled a blinder here. And also there's a psychological edge. Maybe they're trying to unsettle Alexander Usyk. Maybe like, yeah, okay, we'll get a little bit of intel, a little bit of guidance from James Ali Bashir. But more than anything, we want to send a statement to the other side, to Team Usyk, to say, hey, Alexander, we got one of your guys in our camp. You know, what do you think about that? This guy, this trainer you worked with, who's already massively experienced, worked with you for 3 years. Yeah, he's on our side now. And he's going to be telling us all your secrets, that kind of thing. It's things like that which could potentially unsettle a fighter. And now I'm not saying that I, off the back of this, am picking Daniel Dubois to win, but I'm just saying, like, Dubois, you got to give him credit. You got to give him credit, because he is potentially out of his depth here, but he's trying. He's trying to get every advantage he can get. So I tip my hat off to him. And one thing, you know, this, I don't think it necessarily plays a role, but it surprised me that Don Charles was actually able to put his ego to one side, because Don Charles famously is quite an emotional guy. I want to say he's a proud man, and he's been prone to, how can I say, been prone to a bit of a defensive nature over the years from what I've seen. And Bashir said it was actually Don Charles who he's had a loose association with. Don Charles reached out to him and asked him if he would like to be a part of the team. And I think Don Charles has really shown that he's trying to get his guy the W in this one. He's not just tagging along for Team Dubois, trying to get the payday. No, he's really trying to give Dubois a good chance and really get him in pole position to win this fight. And yeah, James Ali Bashir said, look, this is a sport where everybody wants to be the guy, especially the trainers. They all want to be the guy who was responsible for the glory, the master plan. Everyone wants to be that guy, but Don Charles is like, you know what? I'm going to bring in someone who's experienced and someone who is potentially even more qualified than myself. So good signs coming out of Team Dubois. As I say, my prediction isn't changing. I'm still going with Alexander Usyk, but nevertheless, it's an interesting development in the lead up to this one. So let me know what you guys think of this. Do you think this will be of any consequence, or do you think it's not going to amount to much? Leave it down below. I'll get back to you. For now, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.